This Canonet G-III QL17 was first released in 1972, and it's probably the best film camera that I own. In this video, I want to outline my thoughts on this camera, tell you the reasons why I love it so much, and why I think you should get your hands on one. The Canonet G-III QL17 was first manufactured by Canon in 1972. It's a rangefinder camera, which means you're not looking through the lens when you're framing or exposing your shot. You just look through this little rangefinder window at the top here. Attached to the front is a fixed 40mm lens, which is a good all-round focal length, and it has a maximum aperture of f1.7, which is pretty much bright enough for any scenario. The camera features a shutter priority auto exposure, so you can set your ISO and shutter speed on the front and let your camera decide what aperture to shoot at, or alternatively you can shoot in fully manual mode just by setting all of the settings here on the front of the lens. I've been mainly shooting with this camera on shutter priority, and I'll tell you why. When you press the shutter down halfway, the metering locks. So that's really helpful when you want to expose for the shadows, which I always try to do when shooting film. So you point the camera at whatever you want exposed correctly, you press your shutter down halfway, then you lift it up to your eye, get it in focus, frame your image, and fire your shot. For me, that's just a really helpful feature. The shutter speed only goes up to 1/500th of a second, but the little leaf shutter inside the Canonet is so quiet and so satisfying to press, and not having a mirror slapping about means that you can take longer exposures handheld and not have to worry about that, mirror slap blur. Another thing the Canonet G-III QL17 helps you with on shutter priority mode is if the camera thinks you need a wider aperture than f1.7 or a smaller aperture than f16, the shutter locks. So that's amazing if you want to avoid those completely overexposed images or the ridiculously underexposed images. The shutter locks and saves you wasting a frame. The light sensor on this camera is right above the lens, which is a real bonus because this means that you can add whatever filter you want to the front of the lens, and the metering will compensate for the difference in light. Another thing worth noting here is that this lens has next to no distortion or vignetting that I've noticed, and that's something I found with other similar fixed lens film cameras. With the Canonet QL17, all you have to do to load your film is pop your film in, pull the leader across to this orange mark here, close the back, wind on your film, and you're ready for your first shot. I don't know what that system's called, like easy loading or quick loading or something, but you can Google that. With other rangefinder cameras that I've used, I found that focusing can be quite hit or miss. But with the Canonet QL17, focusing is super easy with the big bright patch that's in this camera. And in my experience, pretty much every single frame I've taken with this camera has been bang on focus. The minimum focus distance for this camera is 0.8 meters, which is about like a full arm's length away, which isn't too bad for a 40mm lens. I wish it was a little bit closer, but you can't win every time. The original battery for this camera is one of those Mercury bad boys, which I don't think they make anymore, but you can easily adapt other batteries to make this camera function, and that's what I've done with this one. One thing I wish this camera did have was a shutter lock switch, so you're not accidentally pressing the shutter. That being said, however, I don't think I have ever accidentally knocked the shutter and taken a frame with this camera because the shutter button is quite stiff, but not too stiff, just like a nice amount of stiffness. Overall, this camera may not be the nicest to look at, but it is so easy to use. It's sharp, it's reliable, it's helpful, and it's just really fun to shoot with. A couple of weeks ago, Ruth and I had a photography job capturing a brand new Airbnb site called Quarterlands. We were invited by the owners to be the first people to stay in one of their shepherd's huts on the farm, so I decided to bring with me my Canonet G-III QL17 and a couple of rolls of Kodak Gold to capture that trip. So here are some of the images that I captured. first couple of shots I took of the shepherd's huts, but it wasn't long before I decided to leave Ruth to capture those with her R6 and take a walk around the area to see what I could find. I then headed back to check on Ruth, and we both decided it was time for some food. So we jumped in the car and headed to Hollywood for an early pub dinner in the Dirty Duck. We returned to Quarterlands and tried to capture some of the owner's farm before heading back to the shepherd's hut for some s'mores by the fire pit. Then it was time to call it a night. The next morning, I got up around 7 AM and headed out in the car along some country roads to see what I could find. Turns out all I could find was mostly gates and fields and trees and, oh, yep, this telephone box as well. I went back, we packed up, and I took this frame of Ruth's last shot at Quarterlands. The owners wanted us to capture some of the local area, and as we were only about 5 minutes from the coast, Ruth and I headed to Helen's Bay for a morning walk. For this trip, I set the ISO on the QL17 at 160 to give the Kodak Gold 200 a little extra light. I also exposed for the shadows, and honestly, I'm really happy with the results. A massive thanks to the Gulabi team in Glasgow for developing and scanning these rolls. If you're looking for a high quality film lab in the UK with really great prices and a quick turnaround time, look no further than Gulabi. So there you go, the Canonet G-III QL17. Not much to look at, but it delivers far above expectations for a 50-year-old camera. Whether you're a beginner or a well-seasoned pro, I highly recommend this camera. I absolutely loved using it and can't wait to get out shooting with it again. You can find these bad boys on eBay for like 50 quid for like a banged up version, but honestly, I would say pay 4 times that much and you won't regret it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Maybe I'll see you again soon in another one featuring this awesome little camera. See ya! Mirror, slap, blur.